Hi, my name is Michelle Rankins, and I am so happy to present this session, Leveraging Technology for Literary Success with Kelly Harris DeBerry and Alan King. Kelly, an extremely gifted poet and creative professional, she is a Cleveland native. With deep ties to the city, her family still resides here. However, she is living in New Orleans. Kelly Harris DeBerry received her MFA in creative writing from Lesley University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. She has received fellowships from the Fine Arts Work Center and Cave Canem. Her new book, Freedom Knows My Name, was released in August of 2020 by Xavier Review Press. Along with the poems, the book is being heralded for its use of technology that allows the reader to scan the QR code on the back and be transported to audio poems. Her book is being celebrated as a model for future books that leverage technology. Some of her most recent publishing credits include 400 Years, the story of Black people in poems written from love, 1619 to 2019. Words, Beats, and Life, the global journal of hip hop. Also, Angles in the Wilderness, Young and Black in New Orleans and beyond. Currently, she works for Poets and Writers in New York from New Orleans, her home base. Kelly also owns a small communications boutique company that offers consulting and communication services for nonprofits as well as other artists. Alan King is a husband, father, videographer, and communications professional living in Bowie, Maryland. He uses film to amplify his books and to support other writers. He's the author of Drift, that was published in 2012 by Aquarius Press Willow Books, and Point Blank Poems, published in 2016 by Silver Birch Press. Of the latter, U.S. Poet Laureate Joy Harjo said, quote, these poems are not pop and flash. Rather, they are more like a slow dance with someone you're going to love forever. King is a Cave Canem graduate fellow and a graduate of the University of Southern Maine's Stone Coast MFA. More information about both of these amazing poets will be available during the session. So enjoy the session, and thank you very much.
Obvious from our slide that Kelly and Alan King would be in conversation about how to leverage technology to assist writers with promotion and just, kind of talk about some of the tech that we've used to help us successfully market ourselves and our books. So I first off want to start by with just a couple of thank yous. I want to thank Reverend Dr. Leah for putting on this conference. I want to thank Kelly Harris DeBerry for inviting me to participate in this conversation with her. I'll just jump right into it. So, Kelly, I have been enjoying your book, Freedom Knows My Name. And one of the things that I really love about this is, unlike other poetry books that I picked up, this book, I can experience the poems in various ways. I can read them, and then you have a QR code on the back, which I'm not going to show. You got to buy the book. But if you scan the QR code, you get a free audio book with this. So, Kelly, I thought that was a cool concept. Love how you give folks options on how to engage with your work. And so, can you talk a little bit about the thinking behind that, like having your words presented both on page, but then also so folks can listen to it?
Yeah. So first, let me also thank Dr. Lewis for inviting us and all the folks at the Great Lakes African American Literary Conference. It's a pleasure to be a part of this, and particularly because I am a Cleveland native, and it's good to be connected and to be home, at least virtually. So I see this as a little bit of a homecoming because I know so many people that are involved with the conference. So let me give that shout out. But to answer your question, Alan, I'm always asking myself, how can I push the envelope for myself as a writer, as an artist? How can people experience my poetry in different ways? And so I'm not a techie, but I am interested in how to utilize technology for the arts. And so doing a little research and doing a little dreaming, I asked myself, okay, people are often saying, we love to hear you read. You know, when I do readings, people are like, oh, that was amazing. And I was trying to figure out, how can I create moments? How can I transport people beyond the book? And so I talked with some folks, researched, and was able to come up with this way of kind of having a new age book where you don't get a CD in the back of the book, but you do get access to audio. And I think that is the wave of the future. You see a lot of writers, they're recording more now. And that is because technology allows us to have different formats, whether it be audio, visual, all those types of things. So that was the background for that. Now, making that happen and making that successful is a whole other story. And what I'm finding is that I'm a little ahead of readers, meaning that a lot of folks aren't using this technology. Readers aren't just yet. And particularly, I should say, a certain demographic. Now, my younger readers are like, yes, we love this. But the older folks are like, okay, how do I listen again? But I'm happy that I'm in that, I have that balance of folks who are learning. And so it's an opportunity to teach people how to use a new form of technology. So that's great as well. Yeah.
Okay. What comes to mind too is that, I'm thinking about gatekeepers and how at one point it was really easy for someone to be a gatekeeper. They, rose to a position of power, and then they had a say over, who they let through or what, right? But like now with the internet, people self-publishing, people, using various kinds of tech to get their work out there. Can you talk about your thoughts around where we are now with technology? I think the technology pretty much, lets you kick the door in. So I don't know if you feel the same way, but if you could talk.
Yeah, I think so. I do think there's a difference between a publisher and a press. And there are many presses that know how to make a book, but there is a different level of knowledge and expertise in how to sell a book, how to position a book, how to get a book in the right momentum. So I think that you have a lot of pop-up presses now more than ever, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they all know, quite frankly, what they're doing. But then there are those who have been in the trenches of publishing and really know the structure of it, and they can help you. So I always say to writers, find someone who really knows what they're doing a little bit so that they can help you navigate the other side of a book. So there's one thing to make a book, there's another thing to sell a book. And to your point about the gates kind of being open now, technology has allowed us to create our own audiences. And so when you have your own audience, you have kind of a direct line to consumers or readers or an audience. And so I think that technology has kind of really softened the ground for opportunities for writers and artists. And so what writers have to do, and I think I'll talk a little bit more about this later, is that it's not just enough to just have the technology. You really have to know how to leverage it in a way that is good for you, because one Facebook doesn't fit all. One size doesn't fit all. one Twitter account doesn't fit all. And so you have to kind of know who you are as a writer and also know how to manipulate it in a positive way. When I say manipulation, in a way that enables you to amplify who you are and also not like be consumed with keeping up with people and keeping up with what that person's doing. So technology, both and one helps you create your product easier than ever before, faster than ever before. And it also helps you build an audience, I think, quicker than, you know, some of the traditional ways that we've had in the past.
Okay. And earlier you were talking about how, you know, for the book, which I'll lift up again, Freedom Knows My Name.
Thank you.
So you had talked about the research you did around technology and like just, you know, dreaming big and having, you know, trying to figure out a way of going from something being a dream to being actualized, right?
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about the journey of where the research took you? And then also, can you talk about the payoffs that you experienced because of technology, you know, with your book?
There's one thing to tell your press, we're going to do this book. And then to add the layer of, I want to do basically an interactive book. It was something they hadn't done before. And also inside of the book, there were things that were kind of against the tradition or against the grain. Like there's a poem in the book that is about my house, people trying to buy my house that wasn't for sale. And the whole structure of the poem is in a neighborhood. It's like streets and like fictitious street names and all those kinds of things. And so getting people to buy into something that they haven't done before can be challenging, and particularly for Black writers, because I think that oftentimes there's a formula that publishing think works for Black writers. And so you have to have your theme, like, you know, your kind of categories. Are you, you know, Black woman? Are you, you know, Black womanist theme, or, you know, home theme or history or whatever. So I have some of those themes in my book, but I'm also just I'm like, the book is actually, it's a doing, it's a live book, right? That trying to be in the world in another way. And so, you know, will this work? Is this dumb? You know, I can't tell you how many times we double checked the code to make sure that if people scanned it, it worked, you know. So you have that, you know, that fear that you'll sell something and it won't work, right? Or the technology will, you know, as it does often, there's glitches and all of those things, you know. So not only am I worried about errors in my book, you know, should the period be there? Is there a misspelled word or that kind of thing? I'm also worried about all the tech aspects that are built into this book. So yeah, I got a couple of gray hairs, I think, in this process of trying to do that. But I think the payoff was really good. I've sold faster than I thought that I would, and particularly in a pandemic. And so I'm close and near to fulfilling my contract already. And the book just came out August 5th.
Wow.
So that's a blessing, and that's good. And I think that, as one person told me, this is like really cheap. This book is $20, and you're getting audio and you're getting a book, a whole book. And that I really underpriced the book. And perhaps so that's a lesson that I've learned. But yeah, I've had stories of people saying they were listening to the book in the car. Like they had the book on their table and they were listening to it through their phone, or some people had their phone and they were reading along with the book. And so those are the things that I wanted to do. I didn't imagine people would be cooking and listening to the book at the same time, because I didn't think of it in the tradition of like audio book, but I guess it is in a sense. So I think the payoff has been good. I think that I had a good cover as well.
Yeah.
And, you know, as some people have told me, like, having a good cover is half the battle.
Yeah.
Because it'll, you know, sometimes a good cover will sell the book. And so I'm grateful to that. And that was the whole process. I had this whole dream list of artists that I wanted for the cover. and all of them fell through for various reasons. And I will say that sometimes it's difficult to try to work with the artist because, you know, it's their work and things like that. But this cover was just a concept by a graphic designer.
Okay.
And I think I like leaning that way more than using an artist's work, because you get into paying that artist and, you know, and all sorts of things in a contract. So that was another lesson learned. That was another aspect of how do we create this. There were various sketches that I came up with. I am not an artist per se, but the artist was like, you know, show me what you're thinking. So we went through various iterations of it, but then we were also on the time crunch. And luckily it worked out for us. So like I said, I was dealing with, you know, the print side of the book and also various technology aspects as well, that I think I've become a better businesswoman for it. And thus far, I can't think of anybody in New Orleans that has done a book like this. So I think you'll see more of this coming in the future. And I'm happy to kind of at least been at the head of the class with it. Yeah.
And you know, so you were saying like how you kind of felt like you underpriced the book because folks were like, oh, you know, you're getting the words and, you know, the audio too. But I think another way of looking at it too is that, all right, so you priced the book how you priced it, but I think, you know, like the fact that I think the pricing helps it get into people's hands, because I've been places and folks like, what? You know, such and such for this much. You know, you talked about the payoff, but I think it's great that, you know, folks who otherwise might not read the book, like the book may sit somewhere, like they can be driving and listen to it. They can be cooking, or in my case, cutting the grass and listening to it on headphones. So I think, you know, I think there's like a couple ways to look at it, but I think if it's priced where, you know, folks are like, all right, let me give this a chance. And then they're like, wow, you know, they're surprised. I think too, that is a better payoff too, because they get that bargain, you know, but it's a bargain in more ways than one, you know?
Yeah. And I'll add one more thing to that. I had no idea we would be in a pandemic at the time of creating this. And so the blessing in disguise in it is that it adds another opportunity for people to sit with the book, because people are at least supposed to be quarantined, you know, wear your mask, you know, shameless, you know, PR again, public announcement. But yeah, so having this book and this type of book in the time of a pandemic, I had no idea it would have the impact that it's had. Sometimes you stumble upon something and it hits at the right time, you know?
Yeah.
And that's a lot of publishing as well. You know, there are folks that have been writing about race forever, and it didn't hit at that particular time that they were writing about it. But now that we're in the Black Lives Matter moment, you know, those people who, you know, have been writing about those things like, hey, I was always writing about this, right?
Exactly.
But the moments, you know, sometimes it's just hitting at the right time in the right moment in the right space in the world. Although I don't believe anything is luck, but some of it is what's happening in the moment. You're at the right intersection of time and place and culture and all of those things. And then, you know, we have to be a little futuristic, I think, and try to anticipate what's next. And so I think that's what I was doing a little bit with this book. So shout out to all the Afro-futuristic, you know, folks out there. You think about that in videos, and I'm thinking about you as well. But if you look back at hip hop videos and Timberland and some of those Missy Elliott videos, those are like, you know, groundbreaking at the time and like foreseeing what, you know, music could be and what it would do later.
You talked about trying to get your publisher to buy into the idea of doing something new. So can you talk about some of the challenges that you experience, if at all, like trying to get the publisher to accept your concept of having a book that can also be heard?
A lot of the struggle was having this book out in a pandemic, right? And trying to stick to the plan. You know, I think a lot of folks were overwhelmed and like, okay, well, let's just do what we can. And I was like, no, we're going to do it the way that I planned. We're going to, do this as best we can. I still believe in this book, and I believe, that we can make this thing happen the best way possible, even inside of a pandemic. It's a lesson also, like, not panicking, and believing that all the hard work that you put into something from the very beginning, that you should see it through, right? Because sometimes we see something happening and then we're like, oh, let me change up, let me go another path, and sometimes you just have to kind of weather the storm of it, and you'll be okay. As I say, weather the storm. Living in the South and living in a place with constant hurricanes and constant threats of storms and floods, it also has helped me build the muscle and the endurance and the fortitude to keep at whatever it is that, you're trying to do. Because the only thing you really have left to leave is, your children and art, So I see this book also as like a way of documenting myself. And that's really important to me as well. And so writers ask me questions, or people ask me to come on as a consultant for projects. I'm asking lots of heart questions, because the tech stuff and how to do and strategies, those things we can always figure out. But, who are you inside of that is equally important. Success is also, I think, about knowing who you are or not. I am just not that, because you can spend a lot of time chasing a lot of things. Yeah. And that's the same way with technology. Your sweet spot might be, one type of technology, whereas other folks can do, multiple things. So we were talking about videos. I was talking about videos. And for people who don't know Alan is a wonderful poet. His website is alanwking.com. You can check him out. He have I think your latest book is Point Blank, right?
Yeah.
So check that out. But what we want to pivot on today is your work around combining poetry and filmmaking together. So can you talk a little bit about how you are doing the dance of both in your work?
Before I answer, I just want to say thank you for those encouraging words. How I got into video was by accident. Like, I started a job as a communication specialist like in 2013, and I had no video editing skills at all. Had never, professionally shot with a camera. And my job was like, oh, there's this intergenerational program in Philly. Why don't you go and get some footage? And so I'm going up there with like a cell phone and I think an old phone that I have, right? And knowing what I know now, I would have gone into it with a lot more planning, but I just did it. It took a risk, like what you talked about with seeing your vision through, taking a risk. And so I just took a risk. I was going up there, I didn't know a whole lot of stuff, but I did it and got the video together, and my job was happy. But I've never been one to want to just do something, and not do it properly. So I was like, well, I enjoyed this, but I want to do it properly. So I started taking evening classes at the community college up the street, and that's how I got into video. And initially, I was doing video just to enhance my work skills. But the program I was in kind of forces you to be entrepreneurial. So we had to create a business name. We had to have a logo. Then we had to have like a however long spot, like commercial thing. And then we shot it at the community college. And so that pushed me to think more outside of just building these skills for work. And then when I had it, I was like, I'd learned everything about B-roll and all these other film elements. So I was like, well, let me try reading one of my poems aloud, and then let me try finding some B-roll to help illustrate that. And you talked about the payoff with your book just from using tech, right? How tech has helped you there. Well, I'll say with Point Blank, I didn't want to go with the publisher I went with Drift. I wanted to try to find another publisher. So, the unintended benefits of tech was that I was like, okay, I'm not doing any more book contests. I'm going to put together a book proposal and go out and try to get Point Blank picked up. And when I did that, initially, I was just going with my word in the proposal and got shot down by almost all the publishers I reached out to. When I went to it again, I was like, huh, all right, let me create some book trailers for a couple of the poems in the book, and then let me link to that and resend my proposal out to these publishers. Well, some of the publishers still said no, but there were at least 4 or 5 that were interested because they watched the video and they were able to engage with the poems in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And one publisher who initially was like, no, you have to be published in our magazine, and you weren't published in our magazine, so blah, blah, blah. When I sent him the proposal again, but with the links in there to the video, he was like, okay, I'm intrigued. Send me the manuscript. And so what that showed me was how this tech that I created, not even intending to use it for that, how it opened some doors for me. Like, it got some people interested in the work, and until I landed the publisher that I got. So I was very fortunate that I got into video for one thing, but then the journey kind of took me to where I am now. So
do you feel that you see your work differently now because you have, no pun intended, but another lens, because you have a new skill? Does that help you as an artist approach your writing differently now because you can kind of think cinematically about your words, or is it vice versa?
Folks that have heard me read, or folks that have read my work, would always say how visual it is. And so if anything, I think the video aspect of it equips me to help me create an experience for folks who may not sit and read poetry.
Mm-hmm.
They may watch the video and be like, oh, okay, that was cool. And that may, for some folks, be their entry to my work, right? So I'm with the Penn Faulkner Foundation. I'm a visiting author with them. And in DC, they buy a bunch of the author's books, and the teachers have to request for an author visit. And one of the ways that the videos have helped is that if a class has been studying my work, the teacher will then play some of the trailers for the students so they can hear how I sound, how the work sound. And then the students will go back and revisit the work, and they're like, oh, okay. And this was an unintentional benefit, but they used it as a way of prepping the students for my visit. And so I don't really see the video part of it informing how I write the poems. I still write the poems how I write them, but I think the video piece of it just gives me another tool in terms of marketing and in terms of allowing people, just like how, folks can engage with your work, reading, listening. The videos give folks another way of engaging with the work. So,
and as you were talking about students and schools, it's making me think of the pandemic now and how technology, the writers that have technology resources attached to their work can be taught virtually in ways that other writers cannot be, or other artists cannot be. And so I think that's the way we're headed for the future. Can you talk a little bit about how the entrepreneurial side of being a writer, and how has your trailers, your filmmaking helped sustain you as a writer?
Yeah. So a lot of my writer friends, like, they are, the idea of like marketing themselves like terrifies them. Like, they're like, oh, but for me, it's a game. Like, I love it. Like, I love, hitting up bookstores that like cold, just hitting them up cold and seeing how many I can get to carry the book, right? And I'm a part of this, when I can join, I'm a part of this Twitter chat that happens like every Wednesday night. It's #book marketing chat. And it's great. Like, the woman that runs it, she's a marketing expert, and she has people on there, and they have like different topics that they engage in. And so one of the guests that she had like hit it right on the head for me. She was like, yeah, when you're marketing yourself, you win as long as you keep doing it, as long as it remains a game to you. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty much how it is, like it's, and I think the tech is another set of tools,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a way of kind of like wiggling into spaces that, if it was just off text or whatever, you could easily have the door slammed in your face. But like if someone hears your voice, some people, when they listen to something, they take it in differently. Or if someone is watching and listening to something, they're taking it in differently. So I think, for me, it's just added another tool in the arsenal in terms of marketing. But for me, marketing has always been a game. It's always something that I've enjoyed doing.
That's interesting that you enjoy it, because I don't think I know anybody that enjoys marketing. I do think that only in writing do we say we don't want to use things like emotion, but if you look at all the other arts, in particular arts that use words, whether it's rap, singing, even commercials, so much of it is rooted in the sound and the voice. It's why we have voiceovers. It's why folks are hired to do audiobooks. It's because the way that one sounds matters, to the work and to the interpretation of the work. There's some writers I enjoy reading their work on page more than I enjoy hearing them. And then there are some that I enjoy hearing more than I enjoy reading on the page. And so I think you just have to find your lane. And it sounds like you've been able to do that, and to kind of have an offshoot from your poetry into this other realm that I'm sure helps you both create other avenues for your work, but also, I imagine, creates other types of income, other streams of income, because you have this skill that many other writers are looking for, artists are looking for, videos, or I want to make a video, or, that kind of thing. And so sometimes the things we stumble upon are the things that really ground us. So we had a few questions, I believe, that we pulled for the audience or the viewers we tried to anticipate some of the questions that folks may have as they're watching and wondering. And let's see if we can pull those up.
I had said earlier how there's some writers I know that the thought of like marketing themselves terrifies them. And, part of that fear is using technology. A lot of them are like, but what if I'm not tech savvy? What if I don't know how to do this? What if I don't know how to do that? And so one of the questions that Kelly and I wanted to address is that, if you're not tech savvy, there are ways around that. And I remember a group of folks who had different skill sets. They found a way to work around their limitations, and part of that was the barter system. There was this exchange of skills. For example, you can shoot, but somebody's not a good editor or whatever. So, if just for me, I'll edit your videos. Or I'm not good with words. This was from another person. So if I need text, or if I need a poet to do a voiceover, whatever, right? They'll go to this person, but in exchange for that, that person will get a skill that they don't have. So that's one idea around what you can do if you're not tech savvy.
As I said earlier, I don't know everything about tech, but I do kind of know what I want, and then finding out how to do that thing, or finding somebody that knows how to do that thing, is critical to your success. You can't do it alone. And so, just taking a look at what people are doing, what technology is doing, how are books being published. And I would say don't be afraid, because sometimes it looks like a bigger mountain than it is. I have self-taught myself of a lot of things, a lot of the stuff that people see. I mean, I've recorded one poem in my closet. I soundproofed my closet with blankets, and the hip hop poem, that was all done in a closet, and when people listen to it, they're like, what? They didn't know that I was in the studio, right? I say to folks, as my grandmother used to say to me, if you have the want to, the how to will take care of itself. But standing back and saying, I can't, I often tell my daughter, don't say can't, that's not allowed in this house. You can say, I need help, right? And find the help you need.
So now that we've discussed, being tech savvy, you know, um, there's some folks that may want to know, well, why do I have to use tech? Why do I have to engage with it anyway? What good is it? And so I think our next point, pretty much illustrates that technology helps you be in places that you're not going to physically be able to be. Your current and future audience can't be with you.
And we know that now because of the pandemic, right?
Exactly.
Like we are all living that. Your future audience and your staying power, just like many, musical artists who, may have started off in the 80s or 90s, they've got to remix their sound a little bit for, the current generation. So writers are the same way. If you still want your work out there and you still want it to reach people, you have to be able to not be all things to all people, but you do need to be able to utilize some of the opportunities that are out there. And so if you look at technology and using it as opportunities versus like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing from, I'm not good with this or that. When you just think of it, reframe your thinking to think of it as an opportunity. Just as an example, I just had someone from London contact me, a professor in London, like send me some books. She teaches at a university in London. I would have never even imagined somebody contacting me from London. But technology, it expands your audience, and it also like puts you in fingertips to so many people that you would have never known any other way. I think she stumbled upon me through audio. So yes, your current and future and your international audience is right at your fingertips with technology. You start watching how people follow you or, that kind of stuff. Like the sky is really the limit. There's no limit, with technology because some people are using it. And you also have to think your audience, some people are, they're quarantining alone. Some folks are, everybody is not partnered. And so a lot of people are using technology for other reasons to find, things depending on what your theme is in your book. So you just never know. Why not just shoot your shot, and put it out in the world and see what happens.
You had mentioned something about, followers and all that stuff, which brings us to our next point. So Kelly, I use Facebook and Instagram. Isn't that enough? Ain't I using all the tech that's possible to help me be successful? I'll say that I think Facebook and Instagram, I think it's definitely important to be on social media, but I think you have to have a bigger plan than social media. And I've learned this, like when I first started marketing myself. It's funny. I was telling my sister, I was like, look, all your followers ain't your customers. So you can be spamming your followers and all this stuff, but it's not a long-term plan. It's not going to be a successful long-term plan. And so I look at Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. I look at those as ways of, if people want to further engage with me or if they want to learn more about me, those are places where they can meet me at. But in terms of like trying to like get the name out there, I mean, it's not enough. And it was funny, like the organization that I work for, we're doing some work with a PR firm that's really strategic in what they do. And one of the things they did was they did a Facebook ads workshop. The woman that was leading the workshop, one thing that she said that just had me like, whoa. And I kind of felt this. She was like, yeah, if you're on Facebook and you put your post out there, how many people do you think see it? Organically, how many people do you think see it? She was like less than 20%.
Yeah.
And she said, Facebook, and because Instagram's owned by Facebook, they kind of use the same algorithm, but she said Facebook is now a pay to play type thing. So now you have to invest in Facebook ads and all kind of stuff. And so it's not enough to just use these platforms to try and You got to have a plan outside of it. So
I'll just add that, in my other work, I do consulting. I have my own small consulting boutique. And, one of the big things that I find with clients is they just think they can put together a Facebook page and like suddenly, hit the jackpot. And, it's really not that. I suggest to everyone to cultivate a community. I still believe word of mouth and like relationships are still one of the best ways to have really committed followers and support. Like I don't have tons of followers, but the folks who follow me are legit. Like my first 3 days of sales from my book were like, whoa, and that was just like people who follow me. You're better off having 90 good followers than, 400 something thousand that just scroll through and like stuff and never buy anything.
Exactly.
So I think that that's important to cultivate relationships. And I also think to be strategic, I don't post all the time, but when I do post things, I try to make it worth someone's time. So I think that's important. And I will also say, we put our whole lives on these platforms and they're always changing. What's to say that YouTube doesn't get bought out by someone else or,
exactly.
Just like we saw with Ancestry.com, everybody's DNA got sold to, the other company, right? And so like one of the things I really emphasize is having a stable email list and constantly building your email list, because if nothing else, email will last, right? But the platforms, what was it a couple of years ago? It was Boomerang, then it was TikTok. Maybe that was a precursor to what we're living in now. Boomerang, TikTok, what's gonna be next? Boom, probably, or something like that. I don't know. So I think that's important. But I also think utilizing technology to make it work for you and to amplify you and to give your art or your work or your writing an edge, I think is really important. I mean, one of the things that is just, even though I knew it, like there's a lot of books out there. There's a lot of books people can buy. A lot of books people can buy. A lot of a lot of poetry books, a lot of Black woman poetry books, a lot of Black male poetry books, a lot of Black boy, like tons of it, right? And so finding ways to create and make yourself unique and distinguish yourself is really important, but in an authentic way.
I can just talk a little bit about that. So one of the things that helped me locate people, so I'll go to a website and, the contact information ain't up there. It's usually just a generic one. And so I am really into Chrome extensions or browser extensions, because they have them for different browsers. And so one of my favorite, and one of the ones I used a lot, was Hunter. And so I can go to a journal, and if I'm looking for like a particular editor there, but their information is not available, if I'm on that page and I hit Hunter, Hunter will comb through and pull up the email address of the person. And it will pull up a history of when that email address had been used so that it's current and it's not, and so that's how I was able to find or locate reviewers for books. That was how I was able to engage with different publishers of journals. Some journals will have their own in-house set of reviewers. And it was also how I was able to contact book buyers at the bookstores. Another thing that I like using, and this is more so like when I'm working with video clients, is WeTransfer. I can send up to 2 gigs of video for free. And that way my client can review the work before we finalize it. And so, those are just some of the tools in my box that have been really helpful.
There's something called storybooks. I think is a storyboard. There's story videos, story photos, and you can use free images and free videos, clips to make your own whatever, videos, everything. So it's like clip art, but it's all video and photos. For example, if you go to my website, and I'm not plugging it, actually, I'm trying to plug it down. There's a poem called 45 Coats, and in there, some of those images, they're just universal images. They're just clips that are purposely for people to make their own videos. There's sound effects. There's like all kinds of stuff. They have monthly subscriptions, but it's not like out the box. So I've worked with other, video folks, and they've used that. So you can just type in Black woman or, snow or whatever, and you can get these things and emergency or whatever, to kind of help with your storytelling. And then it helps you like a storyboard and all of that. So that's one thing that I think is pretty cool. And I'm still learning, teaching myself how to use it. So there's that. I can drop that in the chat as well. That just came to my mind. And so there's a lot of tech stuff. I think I read yesterday there's 26 million podcast episodes happening, every day or so, or every couple of days, in a year. There's just like a lot of podcasts. So I think that's happening because I think that more people can't be still, and podcasts go with you, in the car, while you're running, mowing the lawn, as you mentioned, all of these things. So I think audio stuff is really good. And there's so many different audio apps. You probably have a lot of stuff on your phone that you don't even know you had. I just recorded with a producer on a new piece, and he's like, "What kind of phone do you have?" And I'm like, "An iPhone." And he's like, "Okay, go find this app. I'm sure it's on your phone. You probably don't know it." Sure enough, I recorded this poem. He taught me how to mix it over the phone. And he said, "Now email it to me." And I was like, "What?" and so he took it, and now he's going to mix it some more and do some things. And so it'll sound like we're in the studio, whatever. And people probably think we were together, and we're in two different parts of the world. So that's another example of how you can utilize things. And I want to also go back to human capital. I know we're talking about technology, but I say that you need like a thought team, somebody to help you think out stuff like what ifs, what other things can you do to help get your vision together, because sometimes, you're thinking about something, but somebody else can give you another good idea, so you need that. You need those kind of thought partners with you. Create a vision board for what you want your writing to do and be. And I think that that's important as well. Find what works for you. There's so many different things. Most people are willing to share, their advice or their journey. Find somebody that you think, you want to do some of the things like they do. And then you can ask if they can mentor you, and see if you can get some support that way. But nothing replaces the work that has to be done as a writer, the editing and all of those things. There are some things waiting that can help you with the next phase of your book. And so we just wanted to highlight some of those things.
Once you get all this tech, or once you get into a barter system and you're able to find people to help you with, tech related stuff, you still have to dream big. And Kelly talked about this earlier, find thought partners. So we want to thank y'all for joining this conversation. I have Kelly's contact information and mine up on the screen. And so please feel free to engage with us, through our various forms of contact. We hope what we said has helped. It might have, opened the door for you to start experiencing tech, or at least thinking of folks in your circle, your thought circle, who are pretty good with tech that could help you with this. And again, I want to thank Reverend Dr. Leah Lewis for putting on this conference. I want to thank Kelly Harris DeBerry for inviting me to participate in this.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody. I want to really shout out Dr. Lewis, because she had the vision for this, and it has to start somewhere. A lot of times Black folks are saying, we need this, we need that, we need our own conference, we need our own festival. Well, she went and got it done. And so I'm happy to see, and I want to check out some of the other things that are going to be happening. Definitely the keynote speaker. And so please support, the entire festival, because this is how, just a small start can really lead to a lot of things in networking. And so I'm in this year because I actually attended last year. And so you never know, again, how things will interact and what roads life will lead you. So thank you again, Alan. It's been a pleasure. And we hope to see you all soon. And we hope to answer some questions also in the chat as well. So look for us there. Thank you.